The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a specialist recruitment agency working in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors.
You must come across people who are running a business, or they've got a solution, or they've got a product, but actually they don't know how to sell.
Yeah.
They've lost a top customer, and now they're like, actually, we've got to start to grow our business.
Yes.
But businesses just come to us.
Yeah.
Like, especially in, say, like automotive or something like that. That must be pretty common.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you start to help people like that? Because that must be very, very difficult.
You can only help people if they want to be helped. And there are some businesses that don't think they need to sell. They don't think that improving their sales performance is going to be of benefit. And that's fine if they are where they are. So the first step is that they think to themselves, Jesus, like, we've got a problem here. We're not selling enough. There's a moment of realization. We've won customers that were doing very well, and then some kind of event, whether it's like a global event or a industry event, happened, and suddenly orders start to dry up, and they think, oh, damn, like, we've got to actually sell something. Some of them are really, they got such a negative mindset around sales. You know, they see it as like a sort of slightly grubby activity. So these are the people you speak to, and they say, oh, we don't sell. You know, we're advisors to our clients, and it's all word of mouth, and they come to us. So in my mind, really, that's just code for we're too lazy. We're happy and comfortable where we are. We don't have a reason to do something better and different that could actually mean more people get to benefit from our product or service. Like, I like the business owners that have got the ambition to say and just recognize that everything in business works better if sales is going well. Like, if you're selling loads of stuff, loads of the other problems in business just go away. They're not relevant. Everything else is harder if you're not selling well. So to come back to your question, and I think your question was, tell me if this is correct, what if you have a product but you don't know how to sell it?
Well, like, there's people like you meet, say, like I do sometimes, you're in networking, and they just don't know how to sell.
Yeah.
They're not salespeople. They're going to a networking event because they're hoping they're going to find someone who's going to start buying their product.
Yeah.
You know, which is 10 minutes away from their business in a really niche sector.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, come on, it's not real. You know, be very, very lucky if that happens. But I think there's a lot of times where people haven't, especially in, say, engineering, where they haven't had to sell. They're a subcontractor for, say, you know, a big automotive company, or they're a, you know, whatever. There's always the subcontractor, and it's always someone else higher up in the chain is selling for them.
Yeah.
That all they're doing is quoting and estimating on the job, and if they win it, they win it. And there's always that enough quotes that they've always got enough work to keep going.
Yeah.
But occasions, that dries up. The big boy locally in the local area puts it into, you know, an EU supply, or it's no longer cost effective. It gets pulled, and they're like, they either go bust.
Yeah.
Or they have to start thinking, how do I sell?
Yeah.
And they've never sold. Do you ever come across people like that?
Yeah. So that's a big, like, cultural shift within some businesses when they're ticking along okay, and then someone thinks, you know what, we could be doing way more if we got off our asses and actually were, like, proactive about selling. So, you know, like the school disco, like, you think back to the school days, you got all the girls on one side, all the boys on the other side, and, like, occasionally there's someone that everyone fancies and they'll go over, but it's the person that's brave and, like, goes over to the other side and put themselves out there and risks rejection that gets the dance or whatever, you know? So that's what I love about selling. It's like, hey, here's a structured plan you can follow that's going to help you achieve your goals and your dreams, and do it in a way that helps other people fix their problems as well. Like, in my head, that's like the essence of selling. It's getting what you want and having both parties go away happy because they got something that they wanted as well. So, to answer your original question, absolutely. There's some companies that realise, damn, like, we need to learn to sell.
I think you'd kind of put the context on it as well, that if you've lost a big account, it could be quite time critical as well. And again, how does that look? You know, when people are saying, Tom, let's not beat around the bush here. We're like, we could be screwed as a business. We've lost this account, or they've gone bankrupt, or they've changed the supplier, whatever. What do we do?
Yeah.
And that's literally what they're saying. They're not going like, they just say, fix it.
Yeah.
So how do you do that kind of conversation when there's like a time critical, issue with that business?
Yeah. First step is always prevention, much better than cure. No one I know goes into sales because they like strategic planning, right? They go into project management or something if they like strategic planning. But to prevent this kind of issue, you need someone, manager or leader, to sit down and have some kind of strategic plan. Look, this is what the sales function is going to look like. This is what our balance of accounts is going to look like. We don't want to have one account that's responsible for 80% of our revenue, because if we ever lose them, which will happen at some point eventually, we're screwed. We want to have a balance of accounts, understanding that some are always going to be on their way out and some are going to be on their way in if we're doing our regular prospecting. So if we're at the point where it's happened, it's like, right, the worst case scenario has happened, they're leaving, we got to have a plan for prospecting. And part of that starts with, right, what is our ideal kind of account? Do we really know that? What's the ideal? Not what could we get if we go around begging around the industry enough? What does the ideal look like? And now we can kind of work backwards and figure out what are the numbers, how many people do we need to speak to get that, and what kind of questions do we need to be asking them?
Obviously, a lot of the things you do on LinkedIn is kind of management, leadership. What are the kind of most common things that you find within where people come to yourself for support and advice?
From management and leadership?
Yeah.
The reason they come to us is generally they see untapped potential in their salespeople. Now, sometimes that's because, hey, they're good, but they could be even better. Other times it's they're terrible, or they're not doing what we wanted them to do. Slightly depends on the temperament of the owner, I think. But very often, we see this quite a lot. The owner built the business, is doing most of the sales, employs salespeople, and then a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, the owner is still doing most of the sales. Like, they're still the one that's got all the big accounts, that's closing all the deals. They're still the one bringing in most of the revenue. And the salespeople are kind of really struggling to get going. And the owner's just like banging their head against a brick wall thinking, why am I paying these people? Like, I paid them to shoulder the burden of selling. I'm still having to do most of the work.
Why do you think that happens?
A couple of reasons. One, just like a lot of companies don't have a process for selling, they don't have a process for leading and managing the sales department. So in the absence of a process, it's all kind of ad hoc, firefighting, let me keep my accounts, come on guys, you got to do more, you got to do better. But there's no structured approach for, okay, how can we develop these people so that they sell way more than I do? There's just a lack of a structured approach. So we teach this idea that there are like really 4 roles for a sales leader or manager. So first is supervisor, and that is what most people think of when they think of sales management, which is, managing the day-to-day activities. Are enough opportunities going into the pipeline? People doing enough phone calls? It's all the supervision of the day-to-day activity, holding people accountable for doing the right level of behavior. Second role of a leader is trainer. So they've got to have a process where they say, these are the skills they need, these are the skills they've got, what's the gap, what training do they need in what areas so that they have the right skills. The third area is coach. So it would be lovely if once people had the skills, they just went and did the skills. But of course, we're dealing with human beings, so they have fears, they have doubts, they have worries, particularly in sales, that mean even if they know what they should do, they don't necessarily do it because they're worried, that they got all kinds of stuff going on in their head. So the coaching role is about sitting down with people and helping them figure out how they can overcome their own fears and doubts and worries to do the right thing more frequently, more often, and develop as a salesperson. And my experience has been that most companies don't do any coaching. You know, it's just, you need to do more of this, send you on a course, that's how to do it, now go and do it. They never sit down and say, look, I know you're going to have some concerns about doing cold calls. It's scary, it's difficult. What do you think the first step is? How do you think you could overcome that? What's going through your head? Tell me what is happening between your ears. There's no coaching whatsoever. And all professional sports people have coaching. Like nowadays, all the top football teams have coaches and sports psychologists, but that doesn't happen in most sales organizations. So that's the third role. And then the fourth role is mentor, which really is about passing on experience and being a role model for your people. So if you want your people to be kind of really organized and proactive in getting out there, it's no good just sitting there doing jack all day. You've got to be a role model. You know, if people see you acting a certain way, they're going to follow and copy that and take their lead from you. Like if you're a sales manager and you're picking up the phone, making cold calls every now and again, one goes badly, and you're like, hey, went badly, no problem, on to the next one. That sets the tone for, hey, it's okay to pick up the phone, make a cold call, goes badly, so what? On to the next one.
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing including certification, logistics and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
All of those four things are very similar, aren't they, really? If you look at it, like I'm looking here, I'm like supervisor, trainer, coach, mentor. Mentor. I mean, like margins between those two, whether they're really, really close. So some of the things I've written down here was when we're looking at where Mike is now, like a more managerial level and why people are getting involved with you, is there much pushback from middle managers? Because effectively, if they haven't employed you to come in and work with them, is that kind of that cultural thing more difficult to break than actually just trying to help people progress in your experience? Are businesses, sometimes the businesses that have been around a bit longer, so culturally unsound in the way they're selling, for want of a better expression, that helping people become a supervisor, a trainer, a coach, or a mentor, they're almost too far past? I mean, I might be talking hot air here, but like, are you finding that? Is that one of the biggest issues just to overcome, that kind of internal conflict within a business, which is meaning that the things that you're trying to do and really the business owner's trying to do, it's too far to be able to pull it back?
Do you mean like they don't want to do something different?
Yeah, they don't want to change. They don't want to change. So you're going in there and saying, we need to do X, Y, and Z because someone's paid me to do this. And really, the people that are around the table, which is the middle managers and the people who are kind of below them, are like, well, you can stick it, mate. Like, I don't even want anything to do with you because this is hard and it's going to show me up. And is that one of the bigger issues than actually?
It is an issue, and so from our perspective, we don't want to work with organisations where they don't want everyone to be involved in training, developing, and changing how they do things. I want to avoid doing training like just for salespeople, the manager's not involved, the leader's not involved, because it doesn't work long term. The salespeople then sit there and they think, all right, Tom's advising them to do this, but then the manager and the leader are advising us to do this other thing that we've been doing, and then they're confused. It doesn't really go anywhere. We want to be working with companies where the leader says, right, we have to change. The managers have to change. The salespeople have to change. And so if we start working with a company, we might well do it in that order. Start with the leader, then move on to the managers, then move on to the salespeople, and it gets rolled out throughout the organisation because everyone has to change, otherwise no one does. But you're absolutely right. There's loads of people, managers included, whose attitude is, well, I've been doing it this way for a long time. I know what I'm doing. Why would I change?
So is there a lot of clear out that happens in those kind of organisations? You know, we're going to make changes. There's this kind of, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but you hear it a lot. People don't like change.
No.
You know, you hear that phrase bandied around all the time. So you're saying everyone has to change. Everyone.
Only if they want to work with us, and only if they want the training to work.
If we know, like, specifically working with you, I'm just talking about for businesses to develop.
Yep.
Based on, it looks like things could be a bit tougher in 2024.
Yeah.
Are you saying that everyone has to level up? Or, I mean, I might be putting words into your mouth, but you see where I'm kind of going with this. It's like, if you want to improve, if you want to develop business, if you want to sell and build a business, are people doing things wrong?
I think that's just human nature, isn't it? People don't like change, but change is the only constant. So the people that make the right changes are going to be ahead of the curve, and people can decide for themselves how they want to go out doing things. I mean, I remember a couple of decades ago, it was really new and novel to have a website. And I remember at the time, there were people whose attitude was, no point having a website. It was just a little shop window thing. What's the point? Whereas, of course, now, major driver of business. It's just taken as read that you've got to have a great website. The people that changed first and went into that world of online digital marketing and stuff, they're going to have an edge. I think part of it comes back to people's ambitions, what their vision of the future is. Yeah, there's plenty of people that have been in a career and they don't really want to change. And if they're comfortable with where they are, good on them, you know?
There's a lot of status quo in the metals engineering sector, historic business sector, quite linear supply chains, well-defined with long-term relationships that go on for generations as well. You know, it's difficult to kind of just break into it, not just least because of the amount of money that's involved in these kind of sectors. But what I wanted to know is, do you think, because the rate of change and some of the tech that's being used by sales professionals, do you think there's more opportunity now for companies to really change within these kind of more archaic business models? Where do you see that opportunity? And then I'll come on afterwards to what are the risks to not changing. But before we get into the kind of the scaremongering, let's have a look at tech and what you're seeing, and seeing what are the kind of things that businesses that are succeeding in sales, what are they doing? What tech are they using?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, because there is a lot of new tech. At the moment, we do some exercises with some of our clients on like using AI to role play or come up with good talk tracks. And I see a lot of that technology as being about improving efficiency, because it can just do stuff quicker than an individual ever could. So there's a real benefit to using it in terms of efficiency. And it doesn't yet do anything that a human couldn't, given enough time. Certainly the stuff that's easily available, the chat GPTs of this world. In the future, who knows? Maybe it will. What hasn't changed is like people and human nature. And one of the things that I like about the sales training stuff and the sales stuff is that no matter how many tools you use to be more efficient, ultimately it all comes down to your conversations with another human being. You know, the most successful salespeople are the ones generally that have the most conversations with real human beings, not the ones that send out the most automated emails or the most AI-generated LinkedIn messages. They're the ones that do the best job of having the most conversations with real people most often. So all the AI stuff, all the tech stuff at the moment, I think is about improving the efficiency of how you're going to get conversations with people.
Because I look at it, and I mean, I might be out of your kind of remit here, but you look at the really big companies, massive companies, these software as a service type of providers, you can't talk to people anymore.
No.
But you buy from these huge companies. Now, the Mel engineering sector, $1 trillion globe, you know, it's enormous. It's absolutely enormous. And these primary industry sectors, if you go further and not just look at Mel engineering, look at the concrete sector, you know, all these kind of things that are these primary sectors, very old-fashioned, all done, a lot of it's face-to-face, it's still done on handshakes and stuff like this. But we're looking at like a bit of a shake-up, and that actually that more face-to-face is still important. But what I'm trying to get at is like, how far are we away from it moving? Are you starting to see that? Is that something that Sandra are talking about at top level and going, actually, like things are moving here?
So I don't know when it happened. Like in every industry, and I have seen this multiple times recently, owners have come to me and said something along the lines of, hey, we're doing well, but 3 of our 5 salespeople are all over 60, or in a few occasions, like over 70. You know, really aging workforce. They got a tremendous experience. They're doing a great job. They got client relationships that are rock solid because they've known the people they deal with for like 20, 30, 40 years. That's great, but it's not going on forever. Like at some point, they're not going to be able to carry on working. And there are plenty of businesses out there that aren't keeping their pipeline of staff topped up. They're just thinking, oh, Dave's been doing it for 30 years. Good on Dave. They're not thinking, well, what happens in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years when Dave is forced to retire? So that's going to be visited upon them. You know, change is going to happen, whether they like it or not. When and how, who knows? I think human relationships are always going to be the trump card. If you've got really solid human relationships with some of your suppliers or some of your customers, I mean, that's the thing that wins, but those are going to have to change. Does that help?
Kind of. It's a big question. I mean, it's probably unfair just to throw it on you, but yeah.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by TW Metals. TW Metals are a stockholder and distributor of nickel alloy, aluminium, titanium and stainless steel products in a range of forms, including tube, bar, pipe, extrusion, as well as sheet and plates. They have sites located in the UK, Europe, the USA and Southeast Asia, and are the largest supplier of aerospace tubes globally. With a whole host of accreditations and in-house processing capabilities, they are the first choice for OEMs, Tier 1s, fabricators and engineering companies across the world, and they're easy to deal with. I worked with them for many years, so I can recommend them. For more details, check out their website or even give them a call to chat about your requirements. Now let's get back to the pod. We'll see automation, won't we? Unfortunately, in our sector.
Just think people will automate how they buy as well. I think there's potential for customers or there's potential for big businesses. That's how big businesses, small, medium businesses as well.
It's okay for commodity stuff. You know, I think that's what that'll be the difference. I think business will get to a point where it's like, I don't want such and such a person taking orders for money that we don't make that much money on.
Yeah.
But where's the value?
Everything tends towards being commodified. If you've got a salesperson that's really just an order taker, then in X number of years, that order taker is just going to be replaced by a bot of some description, 100%. If they're not adding any value, so certainly sales jobs, I think, are going to increasingly become more for the complex, very high value stuff where there is more ambiguity and they do need someone that can add clarity to the buying process. Because if you just got an order taker, if you're the business owner and you're paying someone a salary and there comes a point where you could just replace them with a chat bot on your website, you're going to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Costs you way less.
And you're in control of it as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
There's so many, you know, I used to see it when I was in metal, it'd be the same size, say sheet's a bad example because that's a commodity, but say a niche tube, there'd be such a variety of margin percentages that it's been sold to because of who's picked the phone up. You know, asking the right questions, finding out, you know, because it'd be sometimes you'd have people wouldn't realise that they might be the only person in the market with that particular size on the shelf, and they're giving it away. Yeah, they've got nowhere else to buy from. Yet you still they're asking for a discount, giving them a discount on something that they can't buy from anywhere else. Because that's where, like, almost like Apple say, they don't do any discount. It's the same when you try and buy, say, a Tesla car or a Sonos. It's like, this is what it is. Take it or leave it. Either buy it or don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we will see stuff, because whoever picks up the phone, it's like we have people in our business, we have a set margin.
Yeah.
And sometimes, people try and push that person down. And you think, well, the best people go, no. So in the end, as a business, we've had to go, we don't do any discount. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And because otherwise you'd have such a different way. And if you have a month where you do 7 jobs, but everyone's done it on
a low margin,
we're taking this out of the podcast. Can't talk about discount. Everyone ringing up saying we do discount.
You don't do discounts.
Don't do it. But yeah.
I like that. It's a good policy. It just makes everything clear, doesn't it? And so for the salespeople, I had this great idea recently that a lot of owners or entrepreneurs that have built a business, sometimes they're not really very good at selling. What they're good at doing is making deals, because they can go whenever they want. Okay, we'll knock this much off. It's their business. They can just done. Thanks very much.
Yep.
But then they employ salespeople, and of course they don't let their salespeople do that. The salespeople have got to sell it at this price and this price only, and then they look at the salespeople and say, well, why are you finding it so hard? It's because the salespeople have got to follow certain rules. They don't have so much authority or license to change things and do things a certain way, whereas the owner had all the license they wanted. So there's a real disconnect, and then they can't understand why the salespeople are doing such a quote-unquote bad job, and the cycle kind of continues.
It perpetuates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we used to see it when I had my metal business. You'd see, because we were small enough, you'd see that an inquiry, like you were saying, for a certain size or something, you'd get it from 2 or 3 different people. We'd just notice throughout the system, so we'd just red flag it, and then anyone that come on, you'd just be like, just whack the price up. And I think, again, it's a slightly different topic, but I think there's an issue with junior salespeople that they perceive putting the price up by 50x as ripping people off, which it is not. Absolutely not. But I think we used to look at that, and my dad was great with me, that he was like, if you've only got it, you can only sell it once, and you sell it for as much as you can. You offer someone a price. If they don't want to take that price and then get it somewhere else, fine, no problem.
Yes,
No one's losing sleep about it, but don't give stuff away. And I think that's where the tech will be interesting, because I think as businesses move more onto websites, particularly when they've got huge remits of products that they can sell, sometimes in the tens of thousands of product line items, it's difficult to see those opportunity sales that Mike and I would have seen when we were really niche and being able to sell and just go, right, we're going to make whack when, make hay while the...
So there's a lot of salespeople who create it now, and because we're an advertisement mail shot, there's always a deal to be had, isn't there?
Yeah.
Discounts. And I think a lot of people, say the generation now, it's like they can only sell with a deal. It's almost like, what can I do? What discount can I give? They're having 2. So it's almost like I best give them a little bit. It's always like, and people are more almost, consumers are more open to asking for a deal as well. It's like, it's that type of environment. I can ask for a discount. It's like I said earlier about buying a sofa. DFS always have a sale on. So once you go in there, or, years ago, it's like buying a car, isn't it? Buying a car, I want a bit of discount.
Yeah.
So it was almost, it's that type of environment. And I think that's kind of now into business where people are going on. They don't feel comfortable. They're almost like, I best do what I think's I think that's a good price. And as long as they think it, the salesperson is a good price, they're fine with it.
Yeah, you just reminded me, it's like Domino's Pizza, isn't it? If you buy a Domino's and you don't get one of the 2-for-1 deals or the 50% off.
You feel like you're having that, yeah.
But that's fine. If it's a strategic decision, this is how we're going to operate. It's that idea, apparently, of having a pricing strategy. Are we deliberately going to be super expensive? That's what our business is about, super expensive. Or is it going to be this pricing strategy, or are we going to do that? If you've decided, then that's great. It's like you said, it's the problem when all the salespeople are trying to do a discount because it's like their mate or their friend or the person they've got a relationship with, and they feel like they're helping them out. Yeah. And then you've got no control over it.
That's when it comes down to having a sales process, doesn't it? people know what they can and cannot do.
Yeah.
Business owners feel scared of putting that in place because they're going, just because we put that in place. I've worked in business where it's like you can only sell at, say, 20% margin. What did you lose that? You were 3% out. Why didn't you speak to me? Mm-hmm. So then it becomes, now we only start selling it.
Yeah.
Now we only start at 17% margin.
Yeah.
And then it's every deal becomes that. And we've seen it like when we first set off, me and Pete, it was almost we were devaluing ourselves.
Yeah.
We've done that. So people do a deal, we say we've done something. Then I'll be like, okay, that's a good idea. And then I sold on the same deal. And before you know it, that one deal that was a one-off is now 3 transactions in the same month.
Yeah.
And we're looking at it going, we've literally just lost.
Yeah, X amount of percent, which could be
also
thousands.
Our payment times have gone, we've actually just lost an extra 45-day payment terms by just offering it.
And most salespeople are taught, or they just pick up this habit that the time to discuss pricing is
at the end
after you've submitted your proposal. They send off the proposal, then they hear back, it's a bit more expensive than they were hoping, and then they go into negotiation mode. I think the best way to do it is to bring up early the fact that you're expensive and ask questions. Look, we're expensive. You could probably get this cheaper elsewhere. Can you think of any reason that our customers are happy to pay 15, 17% more? Why do you think they do that? I want to see if the prospect can have a guess why they do it, or if they can come up with a reason why they might be happy to pay more. If you can have that conversation about pricing early, it doesn't become a problem at the end.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move, or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, powering employment in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. I mean, we love it when we get a cold call here. I mean, don't just all ring us, but it is true. Like when we get, I'll say to me, she goes, I've got someone on the phone. I'm like, well, who is it? Like, I don't know. I'm like, I'll take it then. Because you're almost like, well, I want to hear the patter.
Yeah.
I want to hear where they're going.
Yeah.
So I'll often ask straight away, I'm just like, look, just get to the point, mate. Like, what are you trying to sell? And they're going around, you're like, whoa, hang on a minute, mate. No, I want you to sell to me. Like, I want to listen. Like, I'm curious. You've got straight through. I'm the decision maker. Tell me, what's the price? What's the value? What do I get? And they just lose their head as if like, whoa, I don't, this is not normally how it goes. Like, you've broken my process.
Yeah. They don't normally speak to a Pete come off at that, do they? He's like,
No, I had one guy who was trying to put the phone down. I was like, no, we haven't finished yet. Don't put the phone down.
You asked me earlier what one of the best ways for a salesperson to improve and really break through was.
Yeah.
One of the best ways is, I don't know quite how you achieve this, is to have other people sell to you.
You could just put your phone number in on Google. Register for anything.
And you quickly work out what annoys you, what bits you don't like, and it's like, well, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like do the opposite of what your traditional annoying salesperson does. So one of my big bugbears is when people start off the call like, hi, this is Tom Mallens. I'm calling from a company called Sandler Training. How are you today?
Good selling.
Yeah, good selling. You don't want to do any of that. The minute you say that, like, you're dead, because they just say, it's a salesperson. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, there's no reason to mention the company you're calling from. They don't care.
No.
Like, arguably, there are some reasons to mention your name, and there are plenty of reasons why you don't want to.
It's a really valuable name. It's strong.
But they're just habits that you go into, aren't they?
Yeah. It's just what everyone else does.
Yeah. I seen someone on LinkedIn it's ages ago, and he was like, unless you're Apple or McDonald's, no one cares your brand.
No.
Because it's like they've never heard of you. The chance are they've never heard of you.
No.
And and it was like, really, just go straight into it and tell him it's a cold call.
Yeah.
This is a cold call. Do you have 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And it was either yes or no. And if it's no problem. Move on to the next person.
Absolutely.
But most people say, yeah, it's fine, because they almost feel bad.
I was really fascinated. So this is one of these like kind of lessons I picked up from some of those early books. The reason people hate cold calls is not so much that they're not interested. It's like this underlying subconscious thing where they think, I've got a needy person on the phone. I've got to deal with someone needy that wants something from me, and they can tell that from like the tone of voice and the familiar pattern of words. Hi, this is John Smith. I'm calling from a company called Acme Corporation. How are you today? And their sort of heart sinks. If you can communicate that you're not needy through your tone of voice, they're like okay with it. Like, so when we call up and we say, like, Dave, it's Tom Mallens, we've not spoken before, like, here's a cold call. Can I take 45 seconds to tell you what it's about? Could you let me know if it's worth talking further or not? Fair? Like, they're fine with it. And part of the reason they're fine with it is because you're fine with it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think the other thing is people that, once you say create a need, because you're very good at doing this, you'll speak to me sometimes and I almost feel like I can't give him some money now because he's actually took all of it away from me. But actually, I don't want to buy. Right at the moment, do you know what I mean? You've rang me, you've created something that I didn't even realise was a problem, and now it's like the conclusion is like, I've got to buy now. But we're not necessarily at the time where
I can help you with that. You'll be okay about not giving him money. I can sort all that.
No, you
I can make you feel better about
give
it.
him loads.
Yeah, some. It's all relative, like we said earlier.
It was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We never had a sales process.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about cold calling.
Okay.
Let's go through the stages,
Yeah.
cold, warm, hot, because there are different types of calls. So if we're talking about cold calling, we all probably got different styles. You know, I'm a phone people and I'll say, can you help me please? And then I shut up. And people can't help. It's almost like the brain, the synapse in their brain that hears the word help thinks, oh, I better try and help, even if they don't want to. And I just have that pause. And that really works for me. And then like you suggested, I will then tell people and say, hey, you know, if I'm talking about recruitment, I would say, hey, I'm calling from a recruitment agent. I know you get boatloads of calls like this. Look, I'm not some other Joey like these other ones. I genuinely have got something that I want to speak to you about. Or can you signpost me in the right direction? Would that be okay? And people are sound. They're all right, generally. But if you're looking at cold calling, and that's like the calls where they haven't got a clue who you are, what works? What are you training people to do?
Yeah, so we've got a structure for phone calls that we teach, and pretty much like everything we teach, one of the first points is you've got to have a structure, you've got to have a process. You can't get good at something if you've got no process. Like, you can't get good as a pilot of flying a plane if you don't have a process for flying it, or a surgeon. You've got to have a process for doing an operation. There are stages you go through. So you've got to have a process for doing calls. Now, once you've got a process, it applies, and you can apply it, whether it's a completely cold call, whether it's like a warm call, whether it's a red hot call to someone you know really well. It's the same process. You're just following the process. So there's a pattern interrupt where you start the call in a way that means you don't sound like a traditional salesperson. Because if you sound like a traditional salesperson, they just stop listening and you're done. They're only just going to say, well, can you send in some information at best? So you've got to do your pattern interrupt. Then you've got to take control of the call by telling them what you want to do. You want to get a short amount of time, 45 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. And in exchange for you explaining what you do, you want them to tell you if it's worth talking further or not. So we call that the upfront contract, or the mini upfront contract. You've got to get agreement. There's no point talking to someone who isn't listening because they're thinking, Jesus, I hope this person gets off the phone. You want them to feel in control, feel comfortable by letting them know this is what's going to happen. And tell you what we do, would you be okay telling me if it's worth talking further or not? Is that fair? Like, as simple as that. Then you've got to tell them what problems you solve. We call that the 30-second commercial. So you're going to list 1, 2, or 3 problems or pains that your products or services take away, and then find out if they recognise those. You then gather a bit more information, like, tell me more about that. Can you think of an example? What's the impact of those problems? And if it turns out they kind of tick all those boxes, you can suggest a meeting or ask them if it's important enough, if solving those problems are important enough to them that they want to meet with you. You close the meeting and then you double check. So we call that the post sell. So it's like a double check. We know that sometimes people agree to stuff they didn't really want to do because they felt under pressure, or they didn't check the diary carefully enough. So we double check it. Happy days. Like, we've got our process, and now we can build up our talk tracks for every different part of that process. And really, it's the same process, whether we're speaking to someone that's completely cold or someone we know really well. We just kind of adapt it.
I actually think that there's an issue with speaking to people that you know well, or you've already got a previous relationship with, that you then, as you were suggesting or alluding to, Mike, you then deviate from doing the things because it's like, oh, well, I already know this person, so I can just go straight to the point. But actually, going through the process still is beneficial, because also you can often miss cross-selling opportunities because you go straight to the close. And it's like, well, actually, I could have sold them quadruple the amount of stuff, but I just didn't do the process because it was a warm, existing or a partial customer or someone that's been referred on to me or whatever, or they know you already. So you just stop doing the process.
This is one reason why many sort of engineering people that I've met and worked with, people in engineering companies, they can be great salespeople, because a lot of them have got, especially if they were an engineer by training before they went into sales, they've got like an engineer's process-driven head on, and they're like, right, what's the process? And they just follow the process, and they just stick to the process. We had a client, and he sold industrial power supply systems. He more than doubled his sales from 1.5 million to 3.1 million in, I think it was just about 18 months to 2 years. Doubled his sales, and it was really by following a process. He just got really clear on, this is my process for the call, this is my process for the meeting, this is what I'm going to ask, this is how I'm going to get the orders I want, this is my plan for the kinds of accounts I want to work with. Everything was a process. He even had a lever arch file with all the little tabs in documenting his process, and he just followed the process.
Oh, it's got one of them.
Oh yeah.
Come on. I didn't even have a lever arch at school.
Dad, don't even always.
Oh dear. Sorry, mate. You got a question?
Huh? I was wondering where we're going. I was thinking, I'm pretty sure we've done our one.
No. Just before you go.
Yeah.
And well done, first podcast. It's always good to break the V on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And in your personal life.
I want to... Yeah. Congratulations on your marriage, mate, as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mistakes, because we've all got a load of them in our locker.
Yes.
I'd like to know about a time where you've done something prior to your sales training time, and you've just thought, I cannot believe I've done that. I want to know that even now you're Mr. Process, good sales, good selling, whatever it is. Tell me a time where you've really dropped the ball.
I'll give you one example. So when I was selling adhesives, one of the things we teach now is you've got to have a good process for finding out if a meeting is going to be worth your time, why they want to have the meeting. I remember when I was selling these industrial adhesives, I got a call come in, hey, we'd like to see you. Can you come to a meeting? And it was right up in Yorkshire somewhere, like 3.5 hours drive. It was ages away. So got up super early, drove all the way there, went into this meeting, and there'd been some miscommunication. I hadn't asked why they wanted the meeting. I was just thinking, hey, tea and biscuits. I'll go and have a nice chat. I can tell my manager that I've had a meeting. Haven't I done well? I went in there, and there was like 8 people in a horseshoe presentation. They all had PhDs in chemistry, all this kind of stuff. And they were asking me about vulcanization processes and the specific molecular composition of these kind of bits of rubber and all this kind of thing. And like, I had got reasonably good at being able to explain enough of the technology, but I just had to say, sorry guys, there's been some kind of miscommunication. I got no idea what you're talking about. And so they'd all got together, all these people. It was a complete waste of time, like for all of ours, and that just burned into my head. Don't go to a meeting without qualifying the meeting. You hear this sales advice like, oh, don't phone up and check the day before because they could cancel it and all this kind of stuff. But like, you're putting such a low value on your time then. Like, that was a day wasted. Plus I came away feeling like an absolute idiot.
I mean, they sound like a good buyer though. I mean, they really wanted that product, potentially. I mean, you said the product was good earlier, so did you get the sale?
Is it? No. No. So that was a big mistake. I've made plenty of others along the way.
One of the topics we spoke about in this second part of the podcast was about losing a cash cow. And I think we were talking about it in the context of businesses, if they lose a big account or they lose an account where there's high profit, it's at that point they're like, effectively, the shit's the fan and we need to sell. We need to pick up another account fast. So they can almost look at sales, marketing, all of those kind of things that need to be done typically all of the time in the wrong way because there's desperation kicking in. And I think it's never a good idea.
I think it happens quite often, doesn't it, where you lose your big account, the margin, and sometimes you don't even necessarily lose it to a competitor. You lose it because they've lost the contract or that contract's come to an end. Mm. And I think what we're probably seeing in this current market at the moment is there's a lot of companies where projects haven't kicked off or they've stopped. People are working a lot more on transactional business, and people are in a stage now where they're trying to grow that contracted work. And I think when you're trying to grow contracted work, you're almost in that cycle where you can pick up 3 month, 6 month kind of call-offs, but to then try and get loads of them, it takes almost 12 months, if not longer, because it's almost the first time you come across one, the chances are they stick with our existing supplier. So then you almost have to try and win it the second time. So it's getting that. And I think when it becomes like that, it's so important about what we obviously spoke about in the first podcast, is about sales processes and how you're going to kind of approach it and know what you're good off as a business. I think so many business, when the markets are hard, go away from the core because they're just concentrating on bringing profit and bringing in business, that actually they try and do too much and they don't actually stick to what they are and look at what's going on, you know, whether that's things going on in the kind of automotive sector with EVs, what's going on within that sector to be part of it, what's coming up, you know, the long term. You know, obviously we've seen a couple of years ago with the Commonwealth Games, you know, what brings that in, street furniture, you know, stadium, all that kind of stuff. You've got to kind of look at those projects and think who are the main suppliers who are potentially going to be getting it. But I think when it's busy, you just have to take what you've got, don't you? But you almost need in business almost contractual business development managers who kind of go away and identify market sectors, who are the main players, and then almost assess, do you want to be part of that market or not?
I think for a lot of salespeople are typically good at creating opportunities, but they're poor at that longer term strategizing. So I think it'd be interesting to know, again, if you're listening into this podcast, have you got people within your business where, as you're alluding to, you're looking at those, what are the market sectors, what are the things that are going to be happening, and who are you kind of, not necessarily the hunters, but who are the people that are seeing those opportunities and then passing them off strategically to your hunters, who are then going to go out and create those opportunities?
Depends what your setup is in your business, don't you? If you look at, say, recruitment's a good example, and there's some other, say, multi-metal stockholders that I've worked in, it's like, if your target is a day-to-day GP target, and you've got to hit, let's say you've got to do a couple of grand a day, you can't go long term because you've got to think about what you're bringing in week to week, month to month. It's the same when you're trying to build a recruitment desk, isn't it? If you're going to spend 2 years to bring on that account, when you know you can just get your low hanging fruit, your quick wins. So it's about what it is and what each team. If you look at, there's a big group who have a transactional business and they have a contractual department. So the transactional go, and if it starts bringing that as a contract, it gets moved on to a different division. So it's almost like you're winning long term that way, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an actual process in place.
One of the other points that I thought was really relevant that Tom made in this podcast was something I learned from when I was working with my dad. When I first started working with him, he was doing a lot of high value orders. So there was very few orders that we were taking, but the values were high. And he was typically making, good margins on some of these kind of projects he was putting together. And it was really interesting when it would come to the end of a negotiation, and he just almost didn't negotiate. It was like, that's the price, that's what you're going to pay. And typically businesses come back, and we all know there's people who they want 3%, they want 5%, they want 4%. So you always have to build it in as you kind of know who they are, because you need to give it them back so that they feel like they've got something. But that never did it. He was like, you'd be lucky if you got 1/4% or something like that. And he was like, look, I know you're going to place the order with me. I know everything's been done. You aren't going anywhere else. And I think that's quite an interesting thing for more junior salespeople to realise, that sometimes when someone's asking for a discount, you don't need to give them a discount. You don't need to do it. You're already going to get the order, and you've got to be strong enough to realise and have done ask the right questions when you've gone through the process of doing the order, to track if you need to give someone a discount or not, because a lot of the time you don't. And it's one of the biggest frustrations for, I think, business owners, when they see a deal that's pretty much going to happen, and then all of a sudden you take off a load of profit, and the salesperson feels like they've done a deal, and you're like, no, you've just lost money. Why have you done that? And I think that's probably for more junior people and people that have been in sales for a long time, who typically sell with a discount at the end. Maybe, that's something to have a think about.
Thanks to our sponsors, SteelBuy, TW Metals, and
Compton Group ourselves. You've got to sponsor your own podcast.
Yeah, 100%. And see you next Tuesday.
See you all next Tuesday.